One of my earliest childhood memories is a moment of pure, unfiltered mischief. One that began with an ordinary sound and ended in an unforgettable mess. You gotta hear my story. When I was 5 years old, the morning was filled with the rhythmic crack of eggshells as my mother prepared breakfast, like she did every morning. A sound so crisp and satisfying that it lodged itself in my tiny, curious brain. There was something about the way that the egg surrendered, spilling its golden heart into the pan, that really fascinated me. I couldn't shake the thought of it all day. So later that afternoon, with the kitchen calling my name, I tiptoed past the threshold, gently closed the door behind me, and I set my sights on the refrigerator. Inside, the eggs sat neatly in their carton, pristine, full of potential. My small hands reached up, grasping the crate like a hidden treasure. I lowered myself on the floor, holding one of those eggs delicately in my palm, rolling it, feeling its smooth, cool surface. But I wanted to hear that sound again, that crack. So I let it fall. Splat! Electric joy shot all the way through my body. That was so fun. But what if I threw it? Not just dropped it, but launched it with all the might in my little arms that I could muster. So what did I do? I grabbed another egg. I stepped closer to the wall since I was so tiny, and I pulled my arm back, and wham! I sent it flying. The explosion of yellow and white against the surface was nothing short of spectacular. I remember my laughter. My laughter just bubbled uncontrollably. It was exhilarating. Another egg, another throw, another splatter of yolk and shattered shell. By the time I reached for the third egg, the door creaked open. My body froze, obviously. There in the doorway stood my mother. Her voice lifted into this high-pitched, "What are you doing?" A question that needed no answer, obviously. I sat there, caught red-handed or egg-handed. My heart was thudding in my chest. And then, this makes me emotional, something unexpected happened. Instead of scolding me, instead of whisking me away to time out or delivering a lecture on wasted food or something, my mother walked over. She sat down next to me, and to my utter amazement, picked up an egg. And then, with a swift flick of her wrist, splat, she hurled it at the wall. I remember gasping, and then I giggled, and then I howled with laughter as she grabbed another egg. And together, we emptied the whole carton, each throw more gleeful than the last. I'm telling you, it was pure, unfiltered playfulness, a moment of connection so rare and perfect that it imprinted itself on my soul. Of course, the fun had its price. When the laughter faded, my mother gently introduced the concept of responsibility to me. If you make a mess, you clean it up. And so, the yolk-covered hands that I had, I learned that joy and duty could coexist side by side. So that day, my mother did something extraordinary. She saw the boy in me, the wonder, the curiosity, the need to explore. And instead of crushing it, she chose to embrace it, even if just for a moment. She knew that I wasn't an egg-throwing delinquent in the making. I was simply a child, discovering the world in the most hands-on way possible. And for that, I will always be grateful to my mother. When was the last time you created something just for the joy of it? Not for an audience, not for validation, and not because you had to, but simply because creating felt fun. Most of us started our creative journey this way. As kids, We picked up crayons without hesitation, made up songs without embarrassment, and built things just to see what would happen. But somewhere along the way, we lost that freedom. We traded curiosity for perfection, play for productivity, and wonder for pressure. But what if the secret to unlocking your best creative work isn't about doing more, but about feeling more? What if it's about returning to the wonder that made you fall in love with creating in the first place? Let's break it down. Welcome to Wonder, a framework designed to help you reconnect with joy, freedom, and depth of your creative process. So let's talk about a willingness to explore. You see, a child doesn't hesitate to pick up a brush, a stick, a handful of dirt, and just start creating. They don't worry about whether it's good enough. They just do. But as adults, of course, we hesitate. We overthink. We ask, is this idea even worth my time? I mean, what if it's bad? The willingness to explore means stepping into the unknown and letting curiosity take the lead instead of fear. It means allowing yourself to try a new technique, experiment with a new format, or even create without knowing if it's going to be any good. Ask yourself this: what's something I've always wanted to try but never gave myself permission to? Start there. Now let's talk about openness to the unexpected. Some of the greatest creative breakthroughs happen by accident. But if you're too rigid, if you're too controlled, what happens? We resist those surprises instead of embracing them. Think about a time when a creative mistake actually made your work better. Maybe a wrong brush stroke changed the entire mood of your painting. Maybe a misheard lyric turned into the perfect hook for a song, or maybe just a random spark of inspiration led you in the direction that you never expected. Creativity isn't about controlling every outcome. It's about inviting the unexpected. So let go of rigid expectations. Allow yourself to be surprised. Now let's talk about nurturing the creative self. Your creativity is like a child. It thrives when it's encouraged and withers when it's shamed. But far too often, we are our own worst critics. We dismiss our ideas before they've even had a chance to grow. We replay past failures. We compare ourselves to others, and we convince ourselves that we're not good enough. But creativity, it's not a contest. It's a relationship. And like any relationship, it needs nurturing. So be kind to your creative self. Encourage your ideas instead of shutting them down. Recognize that every season, whether you're overflowing with inspiration or struggling to start, is part of your growth. Ask yourself this: how can I be more compassionate toward my creative process today? Now let's talk about the discovery of authentic expression. See, there's a difference between making something good and making something true. Many of us shape our work around what's trending, what gets engagement, what we think people want to see. But the most powerful creative work doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal truth. Your voice, your perspective, your way of seeing the world, these are yours alone, and no one else can replicate them. Ask yourself this: what themes, what colors, what sounds or stories resonate deeply with me? What would I create if I wasn't worried about what anyone else thought? Am I creating from a place of passion or from a need for approval? You see, authenticity is more valuable than perfection. Create something that feels true to you. Now let's talk about empathy for the process. Some days, creativity flows like a river. Other days, it feels like dragging a boulder uphill, doesn't it? You see, when we hit creative blocks, we tend to judge ourselves harshly. We assume that we've lost our touch, that we'll never create something meaningful again. But the truth is, creativity is cyclical. Even the greatest artists, writers, musicians experience doubt. So instead of criticizing yourself when the process feels slow, Practice empathy. Trust that even in the struggles, your creative work is evolving beneath the surface. And ask yourself this: what would it look like to approach my creative journey with the same patience that I would offer someone else? Now let's talk about the reintegration of passion and play. Mastery doesn't mean losing joy. In fact, the best creators are the ones who never stop playing. But as we get older, we start attaching productivity to everything. If a project doesn't have a clear purpose, it feels pointless, doesn't it? But what if we allowed ourselves to create just for the sake of creating? Give yourself permission to make something useless. Paint something without knowing what it will become. Write nonsense poetry. Take pictures of random textures. The goal isn't to produce a masterpiece. It's to reconnect with the sheer joy of making. So ask yourself this: what's something I can create today that serves no purpose other than to make me happy? Your creativity isn't gone. It's just buried under expectation, under pressure and doubt. But you can reclaim it. You can return to wonder, willingness to explore, openness to the unexpected, nurturing the creative self, discovery of authentic expression, empathy for the process, and reintegration of passion and play. This is how you return to the magic of creating, not for an audience, not for validation, but simply because you love it. So here's my challenge to you. What's just one way that you can bring wonder back into your creative process this week? What's something that you can make, not for approval, but for pure joy? Drop it in the comments below. Let's rediscover creativity together. Now, go create.